We're now going to go over the parts of a Yu-Gi-Oh card. The different features of cards are relevant for supporting the different strategies you might choose to play. This is the card's name. When a card name is mentioned in another card's text, it will appear in quotation marks. If cards have the same name, they are considered to be the same card, even if they have different artworks. And as mentioned in the previous video, cards whose name are always treated as a named card count towards the 3-copy maximum when building your deck. Some cards will have a card's name when in certain places like the graveyard or field, but because they aren't always treated as having that card's name, they do not count towards the 3-card maximum. So you can play 3 copies of Cyber Dragon and 3 copies of Cyber Dragon Core, because its name isn't always treated as Cyber Dragon, only while it's on the field or in the graveyard. Some cards in the game will interact with specifically named cards, such as Eternal Soul, which interacts with cards specifically named Dark Magician. Many older fusion monsters require specifically named monsters as fusion material. Occasionally, extra deck monsters require specifically named materials, although more current cards require all kinds of requirements that are less strict than a specific card's name. Monsters' different features can always be a requirement of being a material for all types of extra deck monsters or for different card effects, costs, or activation requirements. Things such as their attributes, type, level, and stats can also be referenced, and we'll get to them shortly. A card with a specific name such as Dark Magician have many cards that interact with it. We call these cards support cards, such as the previously mentioned Eternal Soul. When building your deck, you should do research and see if any of your specifically named cards you intend to play have additional support that are worth playing. Some cards will actually share a few words or characters of a word in their name. All monsters which contain the word Evil Swarm are part of the Evil Swarm archetype and gain access to support cards that specify Evil Swarm card, Evil Swarm monster, or Evil Swarm spell or trap. The reason I chose this archetype is because most of the support cards refer to L-Swarm cards because the cards work on both Evil Swarm cards as well as Steel Swarm cards. The archetype names need not contain the exact text on the card, but should contain the characters specified on the support card to be able to use them in your deck. Most decks in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Are from different archetypes, providing different supports to different decks. When cards are not restricted to working with other cards, everyone plays the exact same best cards. The restrictions on cards is what actually creates diversity in Yu-Gi-Oh! When cards have little to no restrictions on their use, we call them generic. Generic cards being good leads to everyone playing the same cards. Most monsters have a level. Count the number of stars here to find out the monster's level. Levels are used to determine if a normal monster or effect monster can be normal summoned or normal set without tribute. Ritual monsters cannot be normal summoned or set and are the only other type of monster that appears in the main deck. Pendulum monsters are half spell card, but their levels are only relevant for them being normal or effect monsters. Most monsters can be normal summoned or set. Some effect monsters do say they can be special summoned in some other way. Some effect monsters say they can only be special summoned and cannot be normal summoned or set at all, but for now we'll discuss how levels relate to normal summoning and setting. Assuming a monster can be normal summoned, you can summon it as long as its level is 1, 2, 3, or 4 without a tribute. A level 5 or 6 monster requires you to tribute one monster you control to normal summon it. A tribute just means to send one monster you currently control on your field to the graveyard and is the cost for normal summoning monsters with higher levels. Level 7 and higher monsters that can be normal summoned require 2 tributes. There are a few cards in the game that have their own special rules for how you can normal summon them. Some require 3 tributes, some can be summoned by tributing continuous spells or traps. Most players try to special summon higher level monsters as the tribute is a mechanic of the normal summon, so they will try to only normal summon low level monsters. A monster's level is important for many reasons beyond the ability to be normal summoned. It's also relevant when performing synchro, exceeds, and pendulum summons, which we'll discuss in a later video. Some monsters actually don't have levels. Exceeds monsters' stars are called the rank of the monster and is on the left side of its card. Link monsters have a link rating which will correspond to the number of the monster's arrows and is stated on the bottom right of the card. Cards effects that discuss level like Gravity Bind do not affect Exceed or Link monsters. Cards that would refer to monsters' link rating would not affect monsters with levels or ranks, and cards that would refer to ranks would not affect monsters with levels or link ratings. A monster's level, rank, and link rating can appear on different support cards and are things that can be interacted with. The Phantom Knight rank up Magic Force interacts with ranks, 1-for-1 interacts with levels, and Link Bound interacts with link rating. So it's important to consider the cards in the game that interact with the different types of cards in your deck. All monsters have an attribute. There are 7 different attributes: light, dark, earth, fire, wind, water, and divine. Spells and traps have a symbol as well, but they just say spell or trap on them. Just like all other parts of a card, a monster's attribute gives it access to different support cards. For instance, Allure of Darkness is often played in decks whose monsters are primarily dark. All monsters also have a different type. There are over 20 types in the game, such as Warrior and Dragon. New types come out on occasion. The Divine attribute came out after the other 6, but otherwise attributes have always been the same. A monster's type can also be relevant when looking at support cards or when making specific extra deck monsters. For example, the Synchro monster Baxia. Brightness of the Yongxing actually requires worm-type monsters to be used for its Synchro summon. The last feature unique to monsters are their attack points and defense points. High attack and defense points are good when battling. Link monsters actually cannot be in defense or face down. Some cards interact with monsters' attack and defense points, such as Deck Devastation Virus. It requires a dark monster with 1500 or more attack to be tributed as a cost to activate it. We'll discuss costs more in the future, but for now I'll say that when cards have costs, it is written prior to a semicolon in its effect box. All cards have a description box or effect box which tells you about the card's effects. Normal monsters have what is called flavor text, which is usually something fun about the card or story between cards in the game. Card effects are written in specific ways to be able to interpret them all the same way. Card effects are written using problem-solving card text or PSCT, and it allows us to read all cards same way to interpret how they're meant to work. We'll learn more about PSCT when we learn about the different types of effects in the game. The statement I made about cost being before a semicolon is an example of problem-solving card text used when writing newer Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Older Yu-Gi-Oh cards without reprints may not have PSCT, but they usually get reprinted if they ever see play, eventually with an errata, which just means an update to their card text to better represent what the card is supposed to do and will at that time get PSCT. Most spells are called normal spells, but there are several subtypes which each have different icons to identify what type of spell they are. The subtypes of spells are Equip, Field, Ritual, Quick Play, and Continuous. They each have their own rules in play and we'll address them in another video. Traps have two subcategories besides normal traps. There are also continuous traps just like there are spells. And there are also counter traps. In the next video we'll talk about the different monster types as well as how to summon them.